It's one of the most disturbing cases we've seen at court TV. This man, Sean Finnegan, along with his much younger fiancée, Rebecca Dishman, abducted a young woman named Jennifer Paxton. And while in captivity, they chained her up, sexually abused and tortured her over the course of days. Eventually, she was murdered and mutilated, her nose and breasts cut off and used for sexually deviant activities, and then placed into a stand-up freezer. The darkness of this tale is extreme, the allegations absolutely horrid. A jury has convicted Finnegan, and now it's time for that same jury to answer the ultimate question: life or death for Sean Finnegan. But first, it was just another seemingly normal day for 13-year-old Neziah Harris. She went to school, spent time with her friends, went to class, and then got on the bus to go home. But when Neziah stepped off that school bus in East Detroit in January, it would be the last time anyone remembers seeing her. Neziah vanished. Where did she go? Who was with her? These are questions that are still haunting her family, and questions her father never got answered, as he has since passed away. But now, new developments in this case. Police appear to be zeroing in on a known local sex offender who is currently in custody. Is this the big break? And will it lead to an answer to the question everyone is asking? Where is Neziah? I'm Benny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. You know, the world's changed a lot in the last 30 years or so, where there's a lot more knowledge about who's in our neighborhood. There's sex offender registries and et cetera. So when there's a sex offender in your neighborhood, if you're a parent, you're concerned. You want to know who's in your neighborhood. You want to keep an eye on them. And if you know there's someone there who has committed these types of offenses against children, you absolutely want to keep an eye on them. And you worry. You worry a lot. But what can you do? What can you do? I mean, you can tell the police, but the police can't do anything until the offender does something against the law. And that's, you know, I look at sex offenders, and I've always said this, that they don't get better, they get worse. Like, their conduct doesn't improve with time, it gets worse through time. It becomes more and more extreme, more and more dangerous. And that's the frustration I think a lot of us feel. Because for a lot of these offenses, especially the first few, they do time and they get out. They get out, but what are you going to do? What can you do? Now, there was concern in a community in East Detroit about a particular man, and everyone was kind of keeping an eye on him and was talking about him. And there were worries, because they knew his history, and they knew who he was and what he was doing. And it was problematic, really problematic and worrisome, obviously, for any parent, any grandparent, and for children if they happen to know. Now, in that neighborhood, a 13-year-old girl went missing in January. Neziah Harris is her name. Just coming home from school, stepping off a school bus and then seemingly vanishing. We know children don't just vanish, something happens to them. And she was the type of kid who wouldn't just wander away. If she's going to go somewhere, she's responsible, she would tell someone. But there was no communication, so everyone suspected something was really, really wrong. And that's turned out to be very, very true, because here we are, and she still has not been found. But there are new developments in her case that we want to talk about tonight. Kimberly Craig from Scripps News Detroit has the latest. And I think you look at this case, that the family has a realistic approach after all this time. So it's really a search for a sense of justice and answers and what happened, but they may be closer. Let's take a listen.
The man who could soon be charged in the disappearance of 13-year-old Neziah Harris is in his 40s, and he's already been charged with the sexual assault of a 7-year-old girl.
Now to find out that with his history, that he's been doing this all of these years to God knows how many other children.
It's been far too long, and, we're ready for some convictions.
There's some of Neziah Harris's loved ones who for months have been holding out hope that she'd be found alive. But that hope for a safe return has changed into something they also fear.
Neziah wasn't the type of young lady to just stay gone without making any contact with anyone. So that did it for me.
They said it was a recovery from day one.
The man believed to be at the center of the 13-year-old's disappearance is on the sex offender registry after being convicted of a sex crime against a child in 2005. And in March, after Neziah went missing, another teenage girl came forward to say the same man began to sexually assault her in 2015 when she was just 7 years old.
He basically came home from prison, and it seems like went right back to his same old activities.
Sadly, Neziah's father, who'd been battling health issues, recently died without ever finding out what investigators believe happened to his little girl. Details the rest of her family now waiting to hear, particularly Jernell and Kawana, who say for years they've been trying to raise the alarm on the man who is now at the center of the case.
We have been adamant about not just letting the family know, but Child Protective Services know way before Neziah came up missing.
During this whole time, I found out there were 2 other CPS cases naming him in several incidences related to children, other than the one that I reported.
We just need closure. We absolutely need closure.
In Detroit, Kimberly Craig, 7 News, Detroit.
That's got to get you angry, frustrated. That they're watching it happen like in real time. We know that this man is a problem. He's a problem. And now, still searching for Neziah. Let's bring in our guest joining us tonight. In Detroit, Michigan, Neziah Harris's cousin, Roxy, is with us. Also joining us, clinical and forensic neuropsychologist and author of the book, The New Rules of Attachment, Dr. Judy Ho is with us. Thank you both. Roxy, how is the family doing, and what's on the mind of the family now with this new development?
It's something that we were hoping that it wasn't the case. However, we're all dealing with it the best way that we can right now.
Was there any, and we don't have to name any names here, right? Because no one's been charged yet officially. But the person everyone's talking about, zeroing in on, that seems to be the focus of all of this. Was there any connection to the family? Any connection to Neziah?
As far as what?
Did she know him? Did anyone in the family know this guy? Was he like in the neighborhood? Was there any sort of relationship or connection with the family or with Neziah?
Yes, he was around Neziah frequently, from what I know, with her aunt. It was her, this person of interest was her aunt that she was staying with at the time, boyfriend.
And how much of the history of this man did people know about prior to Neziah vanishing?
I believe it was pretty public. His history is pretty public, considering the fact that he's a registered sex offender. So you can just type in his name and he'll pop up. I believe he also did some prison time for the same thing. So it pretty much seems like he went to prison for it, got out of prison for it, and turned around and did the same thing.
Dr. Judy Ho, I opened tonight talking about my perspective, and my perspective is from following cases and being a prosecutor and seeing the rap sheets. And for what I've seen from my end is that people like this tend to get worse, not better. There's like, putting them in jail doesn't do anything. They just get out and the conduct continues and it gets more risky, more extreme, more dangerous.
That's right, Vinny. And it's so sad because you want to have hope in the human condition, right? And I think that there's a small proportion of people who can truly be recidivated, who truly say, yes, I want to heal. I want to be a better person. But for the most part, individuals with these types of rap sheets, what's protective of society is essentially keeping them away from society. And so oftentimes these individuals, they should not get early release. They may not respond to treatment programs, and they may not care enough to stop themselves, even if there's a part of them that knows what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah, sex offenders, I've seen it so many times. Roxy, let's talk about the search for Naziah. What's the latest there? What's the status? I know the family was really involved. I know trying to get the community involved, and there was a lot of response. I know there were Facebook Lives that the family was doing from time to time during some of these searches as well. How is that going right now?
Right now, the searches have ceased due to the police asking for us to stop at this moment because they have all of the supporting evidence that they need to convict the person that is responsible. So right now, we're just waiting for the Detroit Police Department to go ahead and make their announcement so that we can give Naziah the justice that she deserves.
And has this given the family a sense of hope? I know it's a loss that I never use the C word, closure. I never use that. I say an opportunity to maybe turn a page. Do you feel like there's a little bit of light now where you'll get a sense of justice, Roxy?
A little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. However, because we're waiting on the announcement, it's kind of like being on pins and needles because we've been waiting for so long. So we want answers. However, we do understand that it takes time. But, you know, as her family who's been searching for her diligently and providing the police with as much information as we can, you know, we just want to we want answers. You know, at this point. So obviously, we have to be a little bit more patient, and that's what we're doing right now. And we just can't, wait to get Naziah that justice that, like I said earlier, that she deserves.
Dr. Judy Ho, 13 years old is such a, I mean, it's a difficult age. It's difficult to navigate through, but you look at that smile, and adults taking advantage and manipulating people who are in this mindset, these sex offenders. They just have a way of saying what they need to say to get their victims where they need to get them so they can do what these people do.
That's right, Vinny, and especially those who prey on minors. This is an age, even as a 13-year-old, yes, you're developing more independence, but you're still in that mode where you trust the adults around you. You expect them to lead you. You follow directions, right? You're not quite at the age where you're questioning adults, being suspicious of them. That's not really the age that Naziah is at. And I think that these predators, they take advantage of this time frame in a young child and a young teen's life where they can still exact that influence. And oftentimes these teens, they're thinking that they're in the company of a trusted person, that this person has their best interest in mind, and that, as usual, is not the case with sex predators.
I want to take a listen to a statement, and it was during an interview. Mervyn Jennings, Naziah's father, who has passed away since. I think this took a toll on him as well. A lot of tragedy in his life, but I want to take a listen to him talking about his child.
I go out every day. We pass out the flyers. I read the comments. I look at this. I look at that. It's a lot. But she was a beautiful a beautiful child, just a beautiful child.
Roxy, that is so incredibly heartbreaking, and so much tragedy in the family.
Yeah, it's I will tell you that it's almost like it gets heavier by the week. It gets heavier by the week with trying to follow, tips and leads, and you coming up empty-handed. So it's a little bit of a sense of relief to hear that the police have what they need, but we're still, on edge. We're still on pins and needles so that we can give Naziah the proper homecoming, and we can grieve and move forward.
Dr. Judy Ho, I wanted to follow up on that for the family. What's your best advice for getting through these moments? And if we get to the point where there's an arrest and there are charges, the next phase of all this begins as well.
Yes. And Vinny, I think that the most important thing is that the family stay together. They continue to reach out to one another for support, that they don't isolate, because sometimes it gets so heavy that you don't want to talk about it and you don't want to connect, but you don't have to always be talking about it when you get together. It's really just for that feeling of you're not alone. We're all in this, and we're honoring this person that we love, and we're hoping for the best and doing everything that we can. And when they do hopefully get to a point of getting answers and getting a conviction, I think it's most important of all that they spend that time not so much in anger and frustration. Of course, that's going to be the emotions that are there, but more that there's finally some peace in getting whatever answers you're going to get, and really being able to balance all of these negatives with some positive emotions as well about the situation as much as it is possible, because it can be so grueling, and vicarious trauma is a real thing. Hearing horrible things happen to a family member, it really weighs heavily on the mind and the heart. And so I just wish this family and you, Roxy, and everybody that loves Naziah the very best during this process.
And Roxy,
Thank you.
Roxy, before we go, I don't know if you have a memory or something you could say about Naziah that might make you smile a little bit as you remember her?
I remember her just being a loving, caring little girl. From the last time that I seen her, she was. She was young. I didn't see her when she was 13, but I seen her when she was maybe, I think, like 2 or 3 years old. So for me, it hits me a little differently because I still see her as that. And to hear something as tragic as this, it's just an unfortunate situation, and but we're here, and we're trying our best to get through it.
Well, Roxy, our thoughts are with you and the entire family. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll continue to obviously stay on this story to see that justice is gotten for Naziah and your entire family, because it's deserved. Thank you so much. Dr. Judy Ho, thank you for your insight and your compassion as well. When we come back, we'll bring in our think tank. We'll take a look at this story and how it's going to progress in our system of justice, and why hasn't there been an arrest or charges quite yet. Plus, coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan investigates the sexual abuse, disappearance, and murder of 13-year-old Madeline Soto. Stephen Stearns has been charged, but claims his innocence. We'll investigate his story.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan.
In every story, in every trial, every case, there's at least two sides to it.
To dive into the latest
Oh my God.
and breaking true crime stories.
This was a very targeted, very personal attack.
Inside
I've never seen that in the Discovery. I've been incarcerated 3 years.
and outside of the courtroom.
She's a psychopath.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that. Vinny Politan investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
It's not normal for a 13-year-old to be missing over 2 months. There is no sign of life. There is no social media communication. There are no friends who've heard from her, no family. It's not normal.
That was the police commissioner when Neziah first disappeared, as the search continued for her. And, you know, she was taking a very hands-on approach in this one, because the police commissioner is also a family friend. I want you to take a listen to Annette Harris. This is Neziah's grandma, who was so close to Neziah. Here she is speaking after her granddaughter went missing.
I'm asking anyone that knows anything about my granddaughter, please contact the police department. She's been missing for a very long time. Neziah is a very sweet child. This is not of her character. We've been looking for her. We've been passing out flyers. We've been calling people. We've been knocking on doors. We have done some of everything. And we're asking anybody that has any information, I don't care who it is, please come forth, contact the police department. Her life could be in danger. Please call the police department. I want my baby home. And I'm asking in the name of Jesus, and I stand on my faith that he's going to bring her home. But if we all can come together and help find her, I'm telling you, we can make a difference. She's been missing. She's been gone too long. I can't sleep. I can't eat. Just bring her home, please. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
The loss and desperation is real. Absolutely real. I want to put up on the screen now. These are the latest developments from Scripps News Detroit. The man suspected in the disappearance of 13-year-old Neziah Harris is already in custody on another case, according to Detroit police, who have not ID'd this guy. But loved ones of the teen believe it's the same man who was in a romantic relationship with another one of Neziah's relatives and is a registered sex offender with a conviction involving a sex crime against a minor. The man, who's in his 40s, was convicted of third-degree criminal sexual conduct in 2005, spent 10 years in prison. They don't get better, they get worse. Let's bring in the think tank. Joining me tonight, trial attorney, fellow of the American College Trial Lawyers, Ann Bremner. Also with us, family law attorney, law professor Randy Kessler, and finally, Deputy Public Defender, L.A. County, Philip Dubé. Great to see everyone tonight. Ann Bremner, 10 years, gets out and finds another victim. He's perhaps two more victims in all of this.
When I was a prosecutor in sex crimes, Vinny, I agree so much with what you just said. We said once a pedophile, always a pedophile. I mean, there was never going to be a difference. If anything, they stay the same and do the same thing, or they just get worse and worse and worse, like you said. So it's just horrible. I mean, we at least have civil commitment in my state for predatory pedophiles that are prolific, and you can actually commit them for life. I think that should be everywhere.
Yeah. Randy, sex crime against a minor, serious enough for 10 years, but not serious enough that we can't just let him back out into the community.
Right, and I'm going to take the opposite approach, which is let's hope they have some really good, strong evidence, whether it's a confession or whatever it is, because even worse than letting it go this long would be not finding the real person. So I hope that the evidence is good and strong and that it's him. But if it's not, sometimes you pursue somebody to the exclusion of everybody else because you want closure so badly. I'm just hoping that the evidence is as good as they think it is. It sounds like it's going to be very positive. I'm looking forward to seeing what they reveal.
Philip Dubé, the family knew there were problems here. They were making reports to CPS. There's a case where he's charged against a 7-year-old, and meanwhile, Neziah is missing. And, that's like the next level stuff, right? You go after a 7-year-old, maybe the 7-year-old survives because you don't think this 7-year-old is going to fight back or whatever. But we have a 13-year-old here, just like Madeline Soto, 13 years old. You know, they're teenagers now. They get an idea. This is not right. They're going to fight back, and that's perhaps what happened here.
It's very possible, but I got to tell you, Vinny, you know, on the surface it looks bad, but I haven't heard one lick of evidence. Obviously, they've been able to secure an arrest warrant. I don't know if they went into the local jail where this suspect was housed and got a statement out of him, but somehow they managed to swear out an affidavit of probable cause to bring him in on these charges. So we'll see what they have. But I will push back a little bit on the recidivist aspect of
sex offenders who go after children?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. If you notice, across the country, there's been enormous reform in our criminal laws in reducing the lifetime sex offender registration to sometimes to 15 years, even 10 years, and 20 years. And what they have found statistically, and obviously it's not the overall arching principle, most sex offenders do not re-offend. Most sex offenders are not predators. Most sex offenders commit an opportunistic offense. So they're not all just hanging out in playgrounds, bus stops, and near schools looking for kids. It tends to be somebody in the family, maybe a babysitter type situation. It's not somebody that's coming through the window like the boogeyman late at night or hanging out, skulking at bus stops. And I can tell you, for example, here in California, we have a 3-tier registration system now, just went into effect, I believe, 4 or 5 years ago. With certain low-grade sex offenses, you don't have to register for life anymore. Michigan is in accord. They have, I believe, what's called the 15-25 life tiers. And you do have to register for life if the victim of the sex crime is under the age of 14. The legislature in its wisdom feels that those are the most at-risk recidivists in the sex offender world. But generally speaking, if you only keep them on the registry for 10, 15, 20 years, chances are you're not going to get them to reoffend. They just won't. And what you end up with is just a repository of sex offenders and a database, but no new crimes to report as a result.
Well, I think all those sex offenders should be living next door to the people writing all those rules.
Okay.
Fair enough. You want to write, those are the rules, and let's put them in the house next door to the guy or woman who wrote it. And then we'll see if they will revise those guidelines. All right, Think Tank staying with us.